So, when did you watch it? When did you watch Shrek? Was it yesterday?
Okay, so yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Shrek the musical.
Shrek the
Okay,
musical review.
you're familiarized with it though, because you did it before. You were Papa Bear and you were Father Shrek as well, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
Papa
I
Bear and
remember.
Papa.
So Ilana has done the musical already. I went to watch it. It was with what company was it?
Simply
Simply Theater.
Theater.
Yeah, Simply Theater. And like the first time I watched it, I hadn't watched Shrek in a long time, so I just went in and I saw it, and I couldn't remember much of it. So watching it again yesterday and like the day before, I really got a chance to connect with it again and
Hmm.
sort of saw how it really worked as a musical, which is what you said
Yeah.
before. You tell me that Shrek was one of the only good musicals to come out of a movie.
To come out of a non-Disney movie, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just like it was fun to rewatch it and sort of get to understand the songs a bit better, see how it works together a bit better. And what do you say?
Well, first of all, well, to give a bit of context, the Shrek, the musical, is based on the Shrek movie, the first one, and is really respecting the entire story of it. And the book and the lyrics were done by David Lindsay Abair, and the
Yeah,
music is done by Janine Tessery, who is known for her work on Thoroughly Modern Millie, on what did she did Caroline or Change. She did Violet. She did a lot of Broadway stuff. She did The Drowsy Chaperone, and she's very famous for her modern contemporary music in on Broadway in the last 20 years. So she brought a really nice musical score in this show, and the show opened on Broadway in 2008,
yeah,
and it had a fairly small success in considering it's based on a movie, which I'm really happy. And then it went over in tours in the UK, in America, in Australia, and now it's licensed for school, and it's a very popular show for high
yeah.
schools
It's
and
great for
amateur.
schools. It's great for schools,
It
honestly.
is. It is one of those musicals where you can have an infinite amount of chorus members, and you can all make them as fairy tale creatures, you know?
Yeah, that's what's really good about it too for schools because you have this huge the freak cast, which is Pinocchio, the fairy god, well, not the fairy godmother, or just fairies and
Yeah.
stuff. You can have like a huge collection of people and just add up more characters from fairy tales. For example,
Mhm. Yeah.
Robin Hood or the Little Red Riding Hood. She's not in the musical, but you can add her. Like you can put her in there.
You can add her, you can even add modern like new heroes, new fairy tale creatures, you know, like
Yeah,
if you look at more recent Disney movies, you like it would be funny to add one of those more recent heroes, you know?
it would be awesome. That's a good idea. I think that's a good idea. And then,
But
well, I also heard because you said you know how they went on tour and how they had like they first had were in Broadway. I read that they didn't make their money back. They didn't make profit in the Broadway show,
yeah.
and then after it's crazy because and as you watch the show, you start to realize that it's a very expensive show. You see the set, you see everything that's going on behind it. And there's so much, and I just can't think how much money and because
I
just
mean, yeah.
Shrek himself, he's got the whole makeup, like the whole body thing, and that's just so much. And then you got the dragon. There's so much stuff going on.
Well, yeah, it is. As you say, it's a very expensive show, and costume-wise, they really went for it. There is an insane amount of costumes. There's a lot of actors to pay on stage. The set has a revolving stage, which means it's one of
Yeah,
those circular stages that can like in Les Mis. And there is a lot of different locations in that show, so the set is quite big and they need to be smart with the way it's built. And obviously when you start adapting a work like from a movie, what is very expensive is not just the production, is gaining the rights. They must have paid
yeah.
lots of rights to DreamWorks to be able to put that show on. And
Do you think
it
DreamWorks
opened.
paid them at all to maybe give them like a hand at them like for the show or
Usually, when you ask for rights, you simply basically pay a person to be able to use their work without them suing you. So
yeah,
they just paid a big fat check to DreamWorks, and then DreamWorks were like, "Well, you do your musical, you do your stuff. We will come in occasionally, and we'll have a little look, and we'll let you know if it's in the right direction or not. And if we don't like it, you have to change that these elements.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
But it went pretty well. So I guess they really liked it because it does really work as a musical. As I said, I haven't watched Shrek in years. I haven't watched it in so long, but just it just feels right as a musical. It feels like a good interpretation of it.
I think it works as a musical because, first of all, it is funny, and a lot of musical theater comedies are that are working are funny ones, especially in today times. You need a a good score with good songs, so that's checked. You need something popular from the popular culture that people will be
Right.
interested enough to go and watch, and everyone knows Shrek. And also, you need something that is, I mean, slightly relatable for an audience and a bit of magic. So if you combine an ogre that can't be loved and a princess and a bit of magic and all of this, you put sparkles on it and you add the tap number and every element that makes a nice musical, you just can't miss it, really.
Yeah, exactly. And what you said about to have a good story, I think it's a good idea to get into the actual show itself now because I'm starting to think, like I was thinking the other day, how can we talk about the musical without actually like involving the movie? And it's a very hard thing to do. So instead, I think we could, talk about how the musical improves the movie. Because
That's a
that's
very good topic. Well,
because for example,
what
just
do you
if
think?
you want to talk or
Go ahead. Tell me first what
okay.
do you think how it improves the movie?
Well, for example, I think like a key thing that it did, it was just it's around 2 hours long, right? I think Shrek was maybe an hour and 30 minutes. I think it was like
Mhm.
less than 2 hours. And first off, you start the musical, and a big change that is made already is that it gives you a way more context of what's going on and who Shrek is. You start off and you see his parents, which is a huge change because you always see Shrek alone. The only other ogre you see is Fiona, but then
Mm,
here you start and you see Shrek's parents. It gives him like a way more humanized personality because he's not just some ogre that was born in the swamp. He's like a human, if you want to say it. He's a
yeah.
person. He's a living being, and it's just like it's really good how then you see Fiona as well crossing through and how like their stories intertwine from the very beginning. And I think that was like a really good change as well. But for the beginning opening number, like what else do you see?
Well, I think that you're very right. When you adapt something from a screen to stage, you need to condense a lot of elements and make them and tell them in a short amount of time. Because you're going to have songs and stuff, basically half of the show is going to be music and the other half is going to be text and dialogues. And basically you need to be able to say a lot in a very little amount of time, and they really nailed that in this adaptation, because as you said, they give context for who Shrek is, and as you said, they humanize him because you already relate to him as the hero that you want to be as an audience. And also on the in the musical theater version that is licensed in the UK, you also see Fiona that is sent off to the tower as a child, which is very important too because it also
Yes,
makes you
that's,
relate
that's
to
what I
her.
was
And
saying. That you see her like walk by at the very beginning, and that's how their stories are intertwined from the very beginning, and it's
very
so smart.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then other elements that really brought something to the story, it's as you said, bringing to the narrative and saying and giving more depth to everything. So for example, they start the show with the I Want song, which is Big Bright Beautiful World, and they do an amazing reprise of that where they go from selfishness to tenderness. At the very end when he sings the reprise of that song, and the feeling
Mm.
is completely different. And his perception of what a beautiful world is changed throughout the show.
It's a great leitmotif that like here in my notes I wrote big bright beautiful word leitmotif because yeah it
Yeah,
changes.
yeah.
It starts off as his perfect perception of the world, which is him and his swamp and him being alone. And then you
Mm,
hear it again in the like halfway through the show when he sings "Who I'd Be," which
yeah,
is so powerful when he says a big bright beautiful world, and he sees himself as the hero, and then he realizes towards the end that his big bright beautiful world is
yeah.
something more, is something way more. Great
Also,
leitmotif.
I wrote that it is very nice that if you decide to have a narrator in the show at the start, it can make you gain so much time and so much storytelling time by having a
Mm,
narrator that Shrek is talking over or is doing a voiceover of his own past, and he says that he was a kid here and he grew and he got sent away. This makes you save like a half an hour of storytelling. So having a narrator is a great idea and it gives you context instantly. Also, I wrote that some musicals decide to do this, and I really like when they do, is when you associate a musical instrument to a character and a part. So by this, I'm meaning that Shrek, the instrument that is associated to him every time you hear him, is the electric guitar. You always hear the electric
mm,
guitar in his songs, in Building a World, in Big Bright Beautiful World, and it's really the instrument really represents him. He's distorted. He is an angry person, and he's really associated to this aggressiveness. But he can also be tender at some times.
mm.
Donkey on the other side, the instrument. Do you know which instrument is associated to him? Which one would you say?
I feel the instrument associated to him is like what's it called? I'm not sure the name in English. It's like the piano, electric piano, right? It's like is it a
I would
bass?
say I would say it's the bass, yeah. Because if you
I
listen
feel
to
it was
every
organ,
startup,
like
the synthesizer.
yeah, like the synthesizer. That's the word. Synthesizer organ. That's what I felt like.
Well,
Don't let me go, don't
I'd
let
say
me
it's the
go.
bass. Because if you look at the beginning of his songs, "Don't Let Me Go" and the travel song, and also especially Three Blind Mice,
Mm.
you hear this dun 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 dun
Oh, true.
dun
That's
dun. And Three Blind Mice, by the way, is an obvious reference to Stevie Wonder, you know? Love is blind, or is it?
oh,
And
I didn't
Stevie
realize.
Wonder was superstitious, and that's why he wears glasses, because he's blind.
I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Because, yeah, that's a nice little reference. There's a lot of reference in that musicals to Broadway.
There's a huge list of references. I was just going through the Wikipedia page for Shrek the
Yeah.
Musical just to, see a bit of the actors and stuff. And then I went down and saw this huge list of references. And I thought, wow, there were a lot of references.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing
For
you
example,
know almost all of them.
I wrote down a couple of them. For example, that there is the in that's the story of my life. They all come together as a line, and they all approach the audience as one. That is
Yeah,
a reference to a chorus line where they all come and they all are waiting for a job, and they do
yeah,
this kick line, which is very famous and iconic in the chorus line. I also
yeah,
wrote that in the song of Lord Farquaad at the end, he does an obvious reference to Wicked by saying, "And
yeah,
no one's gonna bring me down." Ah, so that
yeah.
that one's
I
really
read that.
obvious. But then there is some of them that are less obvious. For example, in the Rats number that opens Act Two in Morning Person, the curtain lifts up a bit and you just see the chorus's
The
feet,
feet.
you know.
Yeah,
And this is a very nice reference to 42nd Street because the show opens by just seeing the tap shoes and the dancers tapping, and then it goes down and then it completely goes up. So that's a nice little reference to 42nd Street. And another one I wrote was there's a whole Chicago section in that song where you hear dun 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 dun, dun, and you see Southern Foster who is doing all of these fussy movements, you know.
wait a second. I was actually just about to tell you, like, for me, I thought that dun, 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 I thought that was a reference to Hair. I was gonna mention that. I thought that was a reference to Donna. Dun, dun,
Oh,
dun, dun,
oh,
dun, dun, dun,
that, that,
dun, 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 dun.
that,
I actually
it
thought
fit
that was
very
a reference
well.
to Donna. Like, I don't know why. It's just the bass line sounded so similar, and I couldn't quite figure out which song it was, but I thought it was Donna.
It actually
You
could
see,
really be. It's quite smart. I see your point. See
you
your
see,
point.
it kind of sounded like it too. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's so many references. It shows that there's been like a lot of appreciation and people really knew what they were doing, and it
yeah,
was a good decision for like both the director and like the book writer and well just everyone who was involved because they really knew what they were doing. It wasn't
yeah.
just some random people.
Absolutely. There's another thing I wrote was about details that is brought to every transition from a scene to another. I really enjoyed because some shows just tend to do a blackout and end a scene like this, or people walk off stage not in the character anymore. But what I really liked is, for example, little details. For example, when Fiona finishes her song at the top of the tower, I know it's today, and then the scene goes into the next scene, so there's a transition. The
She
tower
goes back.
slowly goes back, and she sits on her bed, and you see her put her feet on the balcony as if she's waiting. And so just this little detail of 2 seconds makes the audience understand that she goes back in her daily routine, and she has a routine outside of this world that we are picturing,
Hmm.
outside of the song. And you can also see this when they go from Shrek and Donkey, when they go into Duloc and they're going for to find to buy a T-shirt for Donkey, and then when they arrive in the next scene after the song of Duloc, he arrives with like a hair as if things happened off stage during all of this, and that a life continued. It's not just when it's on stage. There's also a story happening when they're not visible, and I really like those details.
It's good. There's continuity and there's like a flow to the show that it makes you feel really involved in it. It's not just like you're just watching a scene, another scene. It's just continuous, right? That's what you feel.
Yeah.
It's really good. And I think it's just so many things to talk about it because it seems like a simple musical, Shrek the musical, and I think it maybe with some songs it gets a bit tedious. I feel some songs were a bit longer than they should have been, but what do you say? For example, "Don't Let Me Go." I know it's like a good song for Donkey because Donkey's supposed to be annoying in the beginning, but I think it like conveyed that emotion of getting on your nerves really good. Because towards the end of the song, he just goes, "Don't let me go, don't let me go, don't let me go, 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 go." And it's just really good how it conveys that because it really does get on your nerves. What do you
Well,
say?
yeah, I think that this is good songwriting when a song has the personality of the characters trying to portray. If the song starts to be long and annoying, it's really perfect for Donkey. I think that a lot of the score is really, really well written and very logical for the characters that they're trying to portray. I think that I think that, for example, if you listen to the musical universe of Lord Farquaad, everything is very childish and very glittery
Yeah.
and very fake. Very uh, uh, everything is in the showing and in the glitter and the pizzazz and the wow,
Hmm.
but it's very empty behind. It's very frivolous. But then if
Which
you
is
look
really
at,
like his character. Yeah, which is a
yeah,
lot
but
like his
then
character.
but then you get this on one hand, which is the typical Broadway number, but then you also get moments like when words fail from Shrek that are very, very beautiful, where he opens his heart, and you for 1 second you don't see an ogre anymore. You just see a musical theater song, a guy singing a song about talking to a girl, and that is really,
Um,
really smart.
hmm, such a good song.
Yeah, I think that maybe some songs could have been a tiny bit shorter. Um, uh,
For example,
hmm?
Donkey Pot Pie. That song is
Oh,
really long.
this is the song I don't like about the show, but I'm really glad because in
They
the
changed it. Yeah.
in the in the tour version they changed it to Forever, which is much better. And Donkey Pot Pie, just the title of it already is really bad. But
And they
yeah,
also
that's the
changed
only.
the dragon alongside that because you know how I told you they didn't make their money back. So for the tour version, what they did, they changed the dragon as well. And instead of being one huge head, it was like a maneuverable dragon that
Exactly.
was carried on
Yeah,
stage.
which
And I
works
think that was
so
a really
much
good
better.
decision.
It is. It is. I really like when musicals improve when they go to a tour, because obviously they have restrictions, but it makes more sense to have just a whole dragon move on stage, because otherwise it's just a head, and I think it makes the magic more believable.
Yeah. And imagine for the kids, instead of seeing like one static dragon head, they see this dragon flying on stage. That's like
Mm.
amazing. And you have to think with the musical such as Shrek, you have to think for a young audience as well.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Very,
Donkey
very.
Kong Pie was fun. Like, sure, it can be a fun song for them, but then you just see this dragon still and kind of moving around. But then you
Yeah.
see this
Yeah.
huge dragon being held by people, and then I think it's like a good decision, really good decision.
What did you think of the skeletons?
The skeletons, I told you, Donkey Pie was like not a very good song for me. So then the skeletons didn't really add much. It wasn't like, oh yeah, the skeletons saved that. I was just
Well,
they were normal.
for me, these skeleton costumes just made me think that it was a cheap Halloween costume, you know? It just made me like really
Yeah.
disappointed to see this in a Broadway show. But
Compared to
I'm
all the
very,
other costumes,
yeah, it's just so bad, like skeletons, you know, and they did not even use UV lights or whatever. They just like in the dark lights or whatever, they just had people you could see their flesh, you know. But I'm really glad because in the stage version, in the touring version, they changed this skeletons to prisoners that have been here for ages with beards that go until to the floor, you know, down to the
that's
floor.
funnier. That's funnier.
It is, and also the prisoners are having their hands like locked, you
Handcuffed,
know,
yeah.
and they just like get it out to start clapping, you know.
That's so
I
good.
think
That's
this
so much better.
it it is, it actually is, and it makes more sense, you know, being prisoners rather than skeletons moving,
I'm
you know.
not sure, but like I think in the movie there was one person attached, like in the caves,
Yeah,
or
there
there
was.
was one person, right, in the movie.
Yeah, yeah,
It just makes more sense because also the skeletons. It's just it reminded me a lot of Of course, this came out way later, but it reminded me of Book of Mormon and Spooky
yes,
Mormon Hell Dream. That's what this
yeah.
reminded me of as well.
The thing is that Spooky Mormon Hellgym is trying to be a parody. Then it's fine to have skeletons
Exactly.
because it's taking the piss, you know. But it's not in Shrek. They're actually trying to make us believe there's skeletons dancing.
Yeah, yeah, and it just looks like yeah, it doesn't really work. Skeletons costumes they don't always work because yeah, it just looks weird. Looks a bit
What
too
did
big.
what did you think of the actors, the principal cast?
The act, well, there's a lot to say. First, we have the big man as
We have
Shrek,
Brian
I
Darcy
Arts James,
James. Yeah,
and he was great. He was great. I mean, I seen a bit of him in what's it called, Something Rotten as well, and he's been in a lot of other musicals. But I think
yeah, he's a
a lot of
Broadway
props to
veteran.
him. Yeah, he's a Broadway veteran, and a lot of props to him for doing this role, which requires so much time, for the makeup to put on. And then his voice is really powerful, which really gives like a wide range for Shrek singing,
Mm,
especially in Who I'd Be. In that song,
yeah.
he just sings so well at the end, and he just lets it all out. And I think is not anyone could perform Shrek. Not anyone could be Shrek because
And
of big
yeah, I
range
can't
of
agree with that.
emotions, the whole costume deal, and the singing. There's just a lot of it, and he's always on stage. Well, not
Yeah.
in every song, but he's a lot on stage, of course.
I really agree with you. I think that he's a Broadway veteran and he nailed the accents. And for an American, it's pretty hard. And he has so much gravitas in his voice, but then he also manages to do this beautiful, big, bright, beautiful world reprise when he's just like I've cleared the swamp. I've taken down the wall, and I've made a little place just for me and you. And he makes this
Mm.
beautiful little like head voice note where he really brings so much depth to the character. His eyes are incredibly expressive, even through all of this makeup. And I think that he just nailed the physicality and the posture, you know, of Shrek. I think that then Sutton Foster, who is also a Broadway legend, is bringing so much humanity to Fiona, where every girl in the audience is going to tell themselves, I am a bit like this, you know? I have
Mm.
the yes, nice, pretty side, but I also have the hey, I want to fight side, you know? Not every princess, she really recreates what a princess means, you know, what being a princess means. You know, she had a tough life, she burps, she farts, she does things like everyone, you know, and she's imperfectly perfect.
And I think that's what's so great about this Shrek story and why it became so popular as well, is because it tells a story of it's a very simple lesson that it teaches, which is to not judge people by how they look. And I think it really the musical really enhances that because we see versions of Fiona that were not really shown in the movie, and also versions of Shrek that were not really shown in the movie. For example, with Fiona's song, I hope it's today. In that song, she we see a side of her that we did not see in the movie, which is her life and how she feels about being there and what she really wants to do. And then you see her come out of her like castle, and she has this interaction with Shrek, and it's really well expressed through the music, and you see this connection. I think like the actors really took that part and did it prop because it's
Yeah.
it's yeah,
And they use Sutton Foster's tap dance skills like really well.
exactly. The rat song, yeah, so
And
good.
then the third man is Christopher Sieber, who played Lord Farquaad. I have to say there's not one scene he's been in where I've not laughed and smiled.
He's perfect. He's perfect. He's perfect. And the way they
What?
wrote for the musical is just so good as well because it brings so much depth to Farquaad that like in the movie was just not shown. As like I know I'm saying this a lot, but it really does. Like the musical does really enhance what the movie had, and it really
And
does show you more.
we understand where Farquaad's anger comes from. It comes from his father,
Yeah, he's
and
a
his
halfling, and
father is grumpy. He's the
yeah,
son of grumpy, you know.
he's from the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's just so good that he's like
I just realized something.
what?
When Farquaad is trying to find a princess and playing the game Find Your Princess, one
Yeah.
of the possibilities is Snow White, and you see Snow White being carried by the dwarves,
Oh,
and one
oh,
of
that's
them is
right.
his father.
Yeah, one of them is his father.
So basically, Snow White is very old.
That's true because if like, or maybe the dwarves just don't age. I don't know.
Maybe that's crazy.
That's
That's.
so weird.
But yeah, what else did you write?
Well, let me see. I got like a bunch of notes here, so maybe we can just talk about some of them. Well, I thought it was funny how they made the for the wolf from Red Riding Hood, how they made him embrace his cross
Drag.
dressing. And like I think in the movie that's shown a bit, but like it was funnier in the musical because they have like this moment where he sings, they kicked me out of my house or something, and they called me a tranny mess, and that was
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
funny the
Often
first time I watched it. Then, well, yeah, we're like how um well yeah that Fiona waited 30 years. I mean, she's 30 years old, which is pretty crazy. She waited 27 years in that tower. That's insane. That's an awfully long amount of time.
it is. It is. It is. It's really a lot. And actually the maths are right, you know, when they said day number 23,
Yeah,
day
that's how I
number
figured it out.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
like I
it's
went on
actually
Google.
yeah, it's actually like they really selected right numbers, which is really I really appreciate that.
Really smart, yeah. And
Yeah.
then okay, so this is a good one. After when Shrek is leaving the castle, when he like has Fiona, and then they're leaving, they're escaping the dragon. There's this
Yeah.
really quick scene where like the curtains close, or like the set comes in like in front of them. He comes out, and then Shrek just does a backflip and just like
Yeah,
kicks everyone. It's so
there's a
funny.
double, there's stunt, yeah.
Yeah,
I
there's a
think
stunt double. It's so funny. It
this is
reminded me of Jesus Christ Superstar when the show
yes.
host comes off stage and he just comes back and does like a triple backflip. It's so funny. I love
They
that.
do
It's
they do the same thing in The Wedding Singer where there's a grandma who's on stage and she's rapping and she's old and then she
yeah,
goes off stage and there is like someone that's dressed as her that does four backflips and then just like rolls on her head and then goes off stage. It's so good.
it's so good. It's such an effective like comedic element because it's so ridiculous, and it's just so funny because you see Shrek, this huge guy, and then he just like does a backflip and starts ninja kicking people in the face. It's so funny. I really like that.
I actually asked myself, it must be pretty hard to do a backflip in that in like a big suit like that.
Yeah, because he still has like a big suit, he's not like a skinny man. He still has this big suit on, and
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. Yeah. And then yeah, it was well. Yeah, again, we keep on talking about Shrek and how the story is about not judging people by how they look. And I think there was a really powerful phrase. It was good writing when Shrek said, "I'm not the one with the problem, donkey. It's the world who has a problem with me."
Yes.
I think that was really powerful. It really
There
shows
is
the soft side of
yeah.
Shrek. He's not the one
There
who wants to be bad. It's just how the world sees him.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of little lines here and there that really pop out a bit more than the others. I think that you're right. The one you said is very, very essential sentence. And also, when they say, what makes us special makes us strong, you know?
Mm.
Or also at the very end when Pinocchio sees Farquaad and says, freaks, huh? Well, I guess it takes one to know one. And I think that this is just brilliant because I think that no one is normal. There's normal is a concept that is created for people to feel safe, but in the end, I think that normality is the fact that there is no normality. There's no one that is the definition of normal. Everyone has quirkiness, and everyone has is a freak in their own way, you know. But then it depends on how much you embrace it or not.
You know what I just noticed from what you said? It's it's really crazy how, like you said, there's no one normal in the show, and I started thinking, who might be normal? And I think the only people who were normal are the guards and maybe the julep dancers, because they're the ones who don't have any quirks or any things to them, and
Yeah,
they're the more boring part of the universe in that aspect, because you see
yeah,
these cast of characters are crazy, and you see the guards and they're all the same, and they're the ones who are normal because they're human,
yeah.
and it's just like it's true what you're saying, that these quirks really do give them a fun
Yeah, but
character.
you're absolutely right. Like these people that are normal are forgettable and boring,
Mm,
and it's really, really well presented in this musical, I think. Yeah.
so good. And then yeah, that's like about it for Act One. Then we have Act Two that we haven't really talked about that much, but yeah,
Act
when words
Act
fail, it's really good.
Act Two kicks off with an amazing opener for Act Two. I think it's very important to have a strong end of Act One that we have with Who I'd Be, which is an
Yeah,
absolutely stunning number musically. They're trying to recreate a bit of the Les Mis vibe, where every character is singing in their own pace, in their own little story. But the music is stunning, and I think that I love it when you have a song where everyone can really relate to the lyrics but in a different way. So this is really strong. And then the opener for Act Two is just an amazing number of tap dance with rats in with top hats and Southern Foster in it being amazing. Beautiful colors, beautiful rhythms, beautiful references, and a belt at the end. Just perfect opening for Act Two, I think.
I think it really does a good job at breaking the ice as well, because we end up on this really powerful and emotional number, and it's just really good, for as in pacing, as in storytelling, to break that ice and keep the story going. Because as you said, we end on this powerful song, and then the
Yeah.
next song is really happy and upbeat, and it gets you back to the story.
And having been in the musical, I was involved in that number in Morning Person, and I have to say that it's not only good for the audience but for the people on stage, the cast. You start a new act so strongly and so motivated that then it's just the hype gets bigger and bigger until the freak flag moment, and then you arrive into the theater, into the church, and there's just so much to it, you know?
It's true. There's a really big difference of just watching the show and being part of it, like you said. Um, it's good to hear from you that you were in it, that the show makes sense for the actors. How you
Yeah.
say, you come in and you have this huge number at the beginning and you feel hyped for it, and it just like makes sense, and it's helpful. It just shows that it was smartly done. It's such a
Yeah.
good thing.
I think it's. Hold on. I just need to go and get my charger.
No problem. I'll talk to you
I,
about something instead while you searching for your charger.
yeah.
And well, yeah, Farquaad, I like you said, he was a
Wait.
great captain and his actor was really good. And I think it was so good how they enhanced him to just not be the villain, but they also made him really funny and believable. He had motivations. He was someone. He had a backstory. You kind of understood why he wanted to become king. It's because he wanted
Yeah.
to be proud of himself,
Well,
and it's
also
just so
because he wanted to stick it up to his dad.
as well he wanted to be proud of himself, like say, I built this is my kingdom. And then he also wanted to show to everyone else that he's maybe hide the fact that he's a halfling as well. So the addition of him being a halfling was a good idea as well, and his character was really something that stood out in this movie, in the musical, and in the
Well,
movie he didn't stand out so
yeah.
much.
You know what they say? There's no such thing as a baddie, as a real bad person. Everyone thinks that they're right and they're doing the right thing in their own understanding of the world. And I
Mm,
think that a good baddie is a baddie that makes sense in his actions and in his decisions. And I think that it's very nice that they created these trust issues from when he was a kid. Everything comes from childhood. Shrek has childhood issues, and that's why he is so angry at the world, and he's
mm,
so untrusting of the world. Fiona has been so independent by herself for so many years, and this is why she is so strong and such a big personality. And Farquaad has just never had a dad because he was working at the mine all day, and
yeah,
he doesn't even mention his mom. So basically, he's been raised without love. So he had to find a way to make people love him. And how do you
make
make people love them? You build a kingdom and you force them.
so smart. I didn't think like that last bit about Farquaad. How you? Yeah, that was that was some good analysis. That's crazy. It's
Yeah.
true. He forces them to love him. Everything is under his control. That's so
And well,
crazy.
yeah. I think that one more interesting element to the show is also that there is physical magic happening, like in the way that Fiona is lifted in the air and changes into an ogre, and
Mm,
you don't see any cables whatsoever. I think that there is ventriloquy that is done. There is
yeah, with Gingy.
sparks. There is fire effects. There is puppetry, and there is all of these elements that you really enjoy when you go to the spectacle, which I think if you can involve them in a show, you should.
If you can involve it in the show,
If you can involve them in a show, you should involve them.
hmm, I agree. I agree. And I think yeah, the practical effects is just something that really took it to a higher level because it has to have the standards of the movie, which is animated, and like we were saying before, to translate the movie to a musical show, you have to have sort of magic on the stage. Saying it's a hard thing to do.
Exactly.
They really found a way to do it, and it's good.
But yeah, what is nice is that they really managed to adapt a story that will both entertain kids, be funny, and really captivating,
And have
at the
us
same
talking
time,
about it as well.
but at the same time, it'll have a deeper meaning for adults and still entertain them. I don't think that any kid will find this too complicated and any adult will find this too childish. There is a very, very, very good balance in this show between adult and childish. And this is the key, I think, really finding the good balance.
As like you're saying, there's a really good balance, and when I was watching it, I probably felt the same, and there's some really powerful scenes that it's just you understand and you really feel what Shrek is feeling. How the world sees him in a way, but he doesn't really want to be that way anymore, and how maybe it's not everything that's happening to him, but it's also powered by everything that's happening around him. How they put him in situations, how he really wants to be himself, but he can't really. And it's just really, it's a good story. Like you're saying, it's a childish story, but with a really well approached for adults.
Yeah, a
And
very mature approach.
that's why it's also one of the most popular movies because it has
Yeah.
this message.
And I think that, overall, now that this show has closed on Broadway and that this show is going to live a long time. I think that is going to have
A
touring
revival, right?
productions every now and then. It's going to have touring productions in the UK, in Australia, in America. And what makes it alive, what keeps it alive, it's that it's a fun show. It's just fun. You never get bored of it, you know?
Mm.
If it's well done, it'll be fun at an amateur level for kids for their first musical theater experience. It'll be fun for semi-professional level for young adults, and it'll be fun for professional level where things are really done more deeply and thoroughly. But it's just It's just one of those musicals that it's a feel-good musical. You're not going there to see a tragedy like Les Mis and cry your balls out. You're there to be entertained, to
Hmm.
laugh, to chuckle, and to giggle, and to really be amazed visually. And that's one of these musicals. I think that they need to stay alive, you know?
I think it's gonna stay alive in different ways as well. For example, in school plays, it's gonna be done a long time because it's a musical that requires a lot of people. It's a musical that can be seen by anyone. It's a musical that's fun, and so it's gonna be in a lot of school productions. It's already been, I bet, in a lot of school productions. The only thing that, for example, how would you put Shrek in a school production, considering the fact you have to have a proper Shrek attire, you have to have a proper dragon set. You have to have a proper swamp. How would you try to manage that out? I think for like
That is
for
a
me,
very, very good question.
because for example, if I were to do it here in Argentina, I want to let's say, okay, let's do Shrek the musical. I can't have Shrek's costume. I can't have Shrek's head because I can't get it anywhere. I would have to find maybe some what's the name of that thing? It's like
Clip
earpieces,
on
right? That
ears,
stick in your head,
clip on ears.
clip on ears, Shrek ears.
Well,
Then
if I were to do it, first of all, if I were to do it in a school, as you said, in high school, I would try to find a partnership with the makeup department, the makeup and costume department. I
yeah,
would have them, I would have the costume department work on all of the costumes. I would have a lot of stuff being not handmade, but basically we would have a basis and they would add stuff over it to really, I think that nice costumes are always important, especially when you're in a fairy tale universe. So I'd get this going on. I would have the makeup team really have something very clear in mind for every character, what they want to do with their hair and everything. And then if they can do prosthetics, that would be really ideal to start and try some looks. If not, if you can't do prosthetics, well then, there's always ways to get around with like a hipster Shrek, where basically you put on him a beanie. But then if you can't get really real latex to do the whole head of Shrek, your costume has to still make sense. So I would then keep his face like white, but I would make his costume reflect Shrek. So I would not put green paint on him if you don't have latex. I would simply put on him like a green beanie. I would make two ears pop out, and I would make his costume something hipstery, a bit like when we did Susical, with Niccolo.
that's
And
exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking the same thing. It
and
really
and,
resembles like the Suzuko vibe.
and the character has to really come through the costume and not the makeup.
Yeah, I think like it's true because if you're gonna sacrifice all of Shrek's emotion and body movements and body language and expression, it's not worth sacrificing that for just a Shrek costume. I think it's better to
Yeah.
have a simple Shrek costume and let the actor fully play out the part rather than having like a something that's in the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for the dragon is a tricky one, but
It's a
the
tricky one, yeah.
dragon, I would try really to play on puppetry. I think that you can do
Mm.
amazing puppetry today, and it's a very good experience for young people to work on that because it makes them understand and try to bring life to something that has no life.
And in the worst case, you can just make like someone play the part and really stylize their body to be sort of like a dragon, which would be in the
Exactly.
case you can't do that. Like you can't build
What
a
you,
dragon.
what, yeah, what you could do is you could have someone like that would be the dragon physically, and then project dragon projections behind, like a shadow or a silhouette, to really make
Mm,
people understand. So
that
yeah,
would be
there's many ways. There's many, many ways. But
well. I
yeah, I
was
think
also
it's
thinking for the props, it would be just a great idea as in a school aspect to just get the whole cast or like the whole freak cast and get them together and just incite them to make the props, because it's a fun activity. Imagine for a
it,
school, okay, today we're going to make props. We're going to make your props. You have like the fairy godmother making her wand. You have, I don't know, the rabbit making his clock. It would be like a really fun activity as well to get the cast involved.
yeah. Well, I think it's very true, and I think that it brings a lot of background story to all of these characters. I'm gonna leave you in 2 minutes, okay?
Okay, so let's
But
let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up.
yeah, let's wrap it up. So, how would you conclude this musical angle
I think we should go with
overall?
the 4 points we were saying, right?
Yes,
Artistic, technical, plot, and music.
go for it. You start.
Okay, so artistically, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 because of what it did. Took the movie and converted it into a musical in such a good way. So an 8 out of 10. For technical, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 because of the huge amount of work and expertise that was in the whole set, the costumes, all the effects. So 9 out of 10. Then for the plot, it's just like the Shrek movie, so maybe a 7 out of 10 because it really enhanced it as well. And for the music, I would give it a 5.5. 5.5 out of 10.
Oh, interesting.
It's not
Okay.
my liking, but it was good enough to give it a 5.5, you know? It wasn't bad,
Yeah.
but it wasn't my favorite.
Well, a very interesting view. I think that for me, so artistically, I would give it an 7 out of 10. I think that you're probably you're more easily impressible than me because you've not seen that many shows. But because I've seen much more now in London, it takes a lot for me to go beyond seven. So I would
Yeah,
say, yeah, seven artistically. Technically, you're right. Prosthetics, the set, the costumes, and all of this moving at the same time is very impressive. So I would give it an 8 out of 10. For me, I would have given it 9 or more if there was flying sets. Like if there was people flying in the skies. For example, I went to see Mary Poppins the other day, and Mary Poppins flies over the audience, not on the stage, over the audience. So that's
yeah.
crazy. But I will talk about it another time. And then for what was the third one?
Plot.
The plot is like the movie, but if it's not a creation and it's just an adaptation, I can't give it a really high note, a high grade. I would give it a 4 out of 10, just because they adapted new stuff. A creation can be much more interesting about what they
Yeah,
created, the ideas they approached. But yeah, I would say okay, 4 to 5 out of 10. And the last one is the music. I think the score is really lovely and you can listen to it on repeat. I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's a nice score. There is some very strong moments. And for me, if you just listen to it and you know that there are some songs that you're going to want to try and sing, it means that it's already above 5. So beautiful music over there. And overall, I would really say it's a very charming musical for all ages, all generations. And that I really hope that any future musicals that are adapting movies or
take a lesson
kids
from Shrek
show, they
musical.
should take inspiration from Shrek. Yeah. Well, I think that wraps it up.
That wraps it up, my brother. It's been
First
great, man.
musical
I've been wanting to
theater
do this for a
review.
while, so
First musical theater review done.
done. We'll see what comes next. So we'll
We'll see
talk
what
later.
comes next.
You're gonna have dinner now, right?
I will.
Okay, enjoy the dinner, bro. I'll talk to you later. Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening or whatever you're doing. We'll see you whenever we see you again. Awesome, bro.
Take
Thanks so
care.
much. See you, man.
Bye.